four objectives in human life, namely religiosity or dharma, economic development, artha, and gratification, kama, and liberation, moksha, from the bondage of material existence. People generally aspire for religiosity, economic development, and sense gratification. But a devotee has no other desire than to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, both in this life and in the next. The special mercy for the unalloyed devotee is that the Lord saves him from hard labor to achieve the results of religion, economic development, and sense gratification. Of course, if one wants such benefits, the Lord certainly awards them. Indra, for example, although a devotee, was not much interested in release from material bondage. Instead, he desired sense gratification and a high standard of material happiness in the heavenly planets. Vitrasura, however, being an unalloyed devotee, aspired only to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, the Lord arranged for him to go back to Godhead after his bodily bondage was destroyed by Indra. Vitrasura requested Indra to release his thunderbolt against him as soon as possible so that both he and Indra would benefit according to their proportionate advancement in devotional service. Text 24. O my Lord, O Supreme Personality of God, will I again be able to be a servant of your eternal servants who find shelter only at your lotus feet? O Lord of my life, may I again become their servant so that my mind may always think of your transcendental attributes. My words always glorify those attributes, and my body always engaged in the loving service of your Lordship. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. This verse gives the sum and substance of devotional life. One must first become a servant of the servant of the servant of the Lord. Dasana Dasa. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised, and he also showed by his own example, that a living entity should always desire to be a servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna. The maintainer of the gopis, Gopi Bharatu, Pada Kamalayur, Dasa Dasa Dasana Dasa. This means that one must accept a spiritual master who comes in the disciplic succession and is a servant of the Lord. Under his direction, one must then engage one's three properties, namely his body, mind, and words. The body should be engaged in physical activity under the order of the master. The mind should think of Krishna incessantly, and one's words should be engaged in preaching the glories of the Lord. If one is thus engaged in the loving service of the Lord, one's life is successful. Okay, so the body should be engaged in physical activity under the order of the spiritual master. The mind should think of Krishna incessantly, and one's words should be engaged in preaching the glories of the Lord. If one is thus engaged in loving service to the Lord, one's life is successful. Text 25. Oh, my Lord, source of all opportunities, I do not desire to enjoy in Dhruvaloka, the heavenly planets, or the planet where Lord Brahma resides. Nor do I want to be the supreme ruler of all the earthly planets or the lower planetary systems. I do not desire to be master of the powers of mystic yoga, nor do I want liberation if I have to give up your lotus feet. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. A pure devotee never desires to gain material opportunities by rendering transcendental loving service to the Lord. Let me read that again. A pure devotee never desires to gain material opportunities by rendering transcendental loving service to the Lord. A pure devotee desires only to engage in loving service to the Lord in the constant association of the Lord and his eternal associates. As stated in the previous verse, Dasanudasa Bhavitasmi, as confirmed by Narottam Das Thakura, Tandira Charana Sevi Bhakti Sane Vasa Janame Haya E Nabilasa. To serve the Lord and the servants of his servants in the association of devotees is the only objective of a pure, unavoided devotee. Text 26. O lotus-eyed Lord, as baby birds that have not yet developed their wings always look for their mother to return and feed them, as small calves tied with ropes await anxiously the time of milking, when they will be allowed to drink the milk of their mothers, or as a morose wife whose husband is away from home always, longs for him to return and satisfy her in all respects. I always yearn for the opportunity to render direct service unto you. A very nice statement. Purport. A pure devotee always yearns to associate personally with the Lord and render service unto him. The examples given in this regard are most appropriate. A small baby bird is practically never satisfied except when the mother bird comes to feed it. A small calf is not satisfied unless allowed to suck the milk from the mother's udder. And a chaste devotee wife whose husband is away from home is never satisfied until she has the association of her beloved husband. Okay. Text 27. Oh, my Lord, my master, I am wandering throughout this material world as a result of my fruitive activities. Therefore, I simply seek friendship in the association of your pious and enlightened devotees. My attachment to my body, wife, children, and home is continuing by the spell of your external energy. But I wish to be attached to them no longer. Let my mind, my consciousness, and everything I have be attached only to you. Thus end the Bhakti Vedanta Purpose to the 6th canto, 11th chapter, of the Srimad Bhagavatam entitled The Transcendental Qualities of Vitrasura. Well, Vitrasura is a real devotee, and although he looks like a demon. Chapter 12. Vitrasura's glorious death. This chapter describes how Indra, the king of heaven, killed Vitrasura despite great reluctance. After Vitrasura finished speaking, he released his trident against King Indra with great anger. But Indra, using his thunderbolt, which was many times more powerful than the trident, broke the trident to pieces and cut off one of Vitrasura's arms. Nevertheless, Vitrasura used his remaining arm to strike Indra with an iron mace, making Thunderbolt fall from Indra's hand. And Indra, being very ashamed of this, did not pick up the Thunderbolt from the ground, but Vitrasura encouraged King Indra to pick it up and fight. Vitrasura then spoke to King Indra as follows, instructing him very well. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, he said, is the cause of victory and defeat. Not knowing that the Supreme Lord is the cause of all causes, fools and rascals try to take credit for victory or defeat themselves. But everything is actually under the control of the Lord. No one but him has any independence. The Purusha, the enjoyer, and Prakriti, the enjoyed, are under the control of the Lord. For it is by his supervision that everything works systematically. Not seeing the hand of the Supreme in every action, a fool considers himself the ruler and controller of everything. When one understands, however, that the real controller is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is freed from the relativities of the world, such as distress, happiness, fear, impurity. Thus, Indra and Vitrasura not only fought, but also engaged in philosophical discourses. Then they began to fight again. This time, Indra was more powerful, and he severed Vitrasura's remaining arm. Vitrasura then assumed a gigantic form and swallowed King Indra. Wow. But Indra, being protected by the talisman known as Narayana Kavacha, was able to protect himself even within Vitrasura's body. Thus he emerged from Vitrasura's abdomen and severed the demon's head from his body with his powerful thunderbolt. Severing the demon's head took one complete year to accomplish. Wow. That's some very strongly connected head. Sukadeva Goswami said, desiring to give up his body, Vitrasura considered death in the battle preferable to victory. O King Parikshit, he vigorously took up his trident and with great force attacked Lord Indra, the king of heaven. Just as Kaitava had forcefully attacked the Supreme Personality Godhead when the universe was inundated Okay. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Although Vitrasura repeatedly encouraged Indra to kill him with the thunderbolt, King Indra was morose at having to kill such a great devotee and was hesitant to throw it meaning the thunderbolt.
Mm-hmm.
Vitrasura, disappointed that King Indra was reluctant despite his encouragement, took the initiative very forcibly by throwing his trident at Indra. Okay, now we're getting real heroic behaviors here. Vitrasura was not at all interested in victory. He was interested in being killed so that he could immediately return home back to Godhead. Wow. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 4.9, Jakvadeham Punarjanma Naiti, after giving up his body, a devotee immediately returns to Lord Krishna and never returns to accept another body. This was Vitrasura's interest. Well, his name is Vitrasura. In other words, it's the name of a demon, but actually it's a devotee. Text number 2. Then Vitrasura, the great hero of the demons, whirled his trident, which had points like the flames of the blazing fire at the end of the millennium. With great force and anger, he threw it at Indra, roaming and exclaiming loudly, "O sinful one, thus shall I kill you." Oh, so this is not, Vitrasura is not giving up. He's really challenging Indra. Text 3. Flying in the sky, Vitrasura's trident resembled a brilliant meteor, although the blazing weapon was difficult to look upon. King Indra, unafraid, cut it to pieces with his thunderbolt. Simultaneously, he cut off one of Vitrasura's arms, which was as thick as the body of Vasuki. Vasuki is a snake. The king of the serpents, yeah. Text number 4. Although one of his arms was severed from his body, Vitrasura angrily approached King Indra and struck him on the jaw with an iron mace. He also struck the elephant that carried Indra. Thus, Indra dropped the thunderbolt from his hand. Text 5. The denizens of various planets, like the demigods, demons, charanas, and siddhas, praised Vitrasura's deed, but when they observed that Indra was in great danger, they lamented, "Alas, alas." Text 6. Having dropped the thunderbolt from his hand in the presence of his enemy, Indra was practically defeated and was very much ashamed. He dared not pick up his weapon again. Vitrasura, however, encouraged him, saying, "Take up your thunderbolt and kill your enemy. This is not the time to lament your fate." Okay. These are bold statements here. Text 7. Vitrasura Continued, O Indra, no one is guaranteed of being always victorious, but the original enjoyer, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan, he is the cause of creation, maintenance, and annihilation, and he knows everything. Being dependent and being obliged to accept material bodies, belligerent subordinates are sometimes victorious and sometimes defeated. Yeah, so Vikrasura doesn't sound like a demon. Sounds more of a devotee than Indra. Purport. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 15:1, Sarvashichaham Vidisani Visto, Mataksvitu Jnanam Apahanam Cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. When two parties fight, the fighting actually goes on under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is Paramatma, the Supersoul. Elsewhere in the Gita 3.27, the Lord said, Pakrite kriyamanami gunai karmani sarvasa. Ahankara vivudatman kartaham iti manyate. The bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by nature. The living entities work only under the direction of the Supreme Lord. The Lord gives orders to material nature, and she arranges facilities for the living entities. The living entities are not independent, although they foolishly think themselves the doers, or karta. Victory is always with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Well, that's a very nice statement. Victory is always with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As for the subordinate living entities, they fight under the arrangement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Victory or defeat is not actually theirs. It is an arrangement by the Lord through the agency of material nature. Pride in victory or moroseness in defeat is useless. Yeah, because it's all controlled by the Lord. One should fully depend on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is responsible for the victory and defeat of all living entities. The Lord advises, Niyatam Kuru Karma Tvam, Karma Jayayo Ki Akarmana. Perform your prescribed duty, for action is better than inaction. The living entity is ordered to act according to his position. Victory or defeat depends on the Supreme Lord. Karmanya eva dikaras te ma phalesu kadachana. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of actions. One must act sincerely according to his position. Victory or defeat depends on the Lord. Beautiful statements here. Vikrasura encouraged Indra, saying, Don't be morose because of my victory. There is no need to stop fighting. Instead, you should go on with your duty. When Krishna desires, you will certainly be victorious. So, Vitrasura, who is supposedly a demon, is instructing Indra how to fight valiantly and not be discouraged. This verse is very instructive for sincere workers in the Krishna consciousness, in Krishna consciousness movement. We should not be jubilant in victory or morose in defeat. There it is. Very important statement. We should make a sincere effort to implement the will of or Sri Chaitanya Maharaj. And we should not be concerned with victory and defeat. Our only duty is to work sincerely so that our activities may be recognized by Krishna. Very nice statement. All living beings in all the planets of this universe, including the presiding deities of all the planets, are fully under the control of the Lord. They work like birds caught in a net, who cannot move independently. Yeah, that's a fact. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The difference between the suras and the asuras is that the suras know that nothing can happen without the desire of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The suras are devotees, and of course, asuras are demons. So he says, whereas the asuras cannot understand the supreme will of the Lord, in this fight, the Vitrasura is actually the Sura. I like that. Vitrasura is actually the Sura, the good guy, whereas Indra is the Asura, the bad guy. No one can act independently. Rather, everyone acts under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, victory and defeat come according to the results of one's karma. And the judgment is given by the Supreme Lord. Karmana Daivanitrena. Since we act under the control of the Supreme according to our karma, no one is independent. From Brahma down to the insignificant ant, whether we are defeated or victorious, the Supreme Lord is always victorious because everyone acts under his directions. Okay, that's nice. Text 9. Our sensory prowess, mental power, bodily strength, living force, immortality, and mortality are all subject to the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Not knowing this, foolish people think the dull material body to be the cause of their activities. Yeah, that's a mistake. And because people make mistakes like that, they unnecessarily suffer. What is the mistake? It's not accepting that Krishna is the supreme superintendent of everything that's happening. Text 10. O King Indra, as a wooden doll that looks like a woman, or as an animal made of grass and leaves, cannot move or dance independently, but depends fully on the person who handles it. All of us dance according to the desire of the Supreme Controller, the Personality of Godhead. No one is independent. Okay, no one is independent. You should remember that. That's very important to know. This is confirmed in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi 5.142. Ekale Ishvara Krishna Arasava Britya Yare Aicha Rache Nachaya Se Taiche Kare Nritya. Lord Krishna alone is the supreme controller, and all others are his servants. They dance as he makes them do so. We are all servants of Krishna. We have no independence. We are dancing according to the desire of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but out of ignorance and illusion, we think that we are independent of the Supreme Will. Therefore, it is said, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchit Ananda Vigraha Anadir Adi Adir Govinda Sarvakarana Karana. Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the supreme controller. He has an eternal, blissful, spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, for he is the prime cause of all causes. Brahma Samhita 5.1. Text 11. Purusha Prakriti Vyaktam Atma Bhutendriya Saya Satnu Vanti Asya Sargado Na Vina Yad Anugrahat. The three Purushas, Karanadakshay Vishnu, Garbhadakshay Vishnu, and Shirodakshay Vishnu. The material nature, the total material energy, the false ego, the five material elements, the material senses, the mind, the intelligence, and consciousness cannot create the mental manifestation without the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay. So a blade of grass moves without the sanction of the Lord. As confirmed in the Vishnu Purana, Prasya Brahmana Shaktis Tate Dam Akilam Jagat. Whatever manifestations we experience are nothing but various energies of the Supreme Personality of God. These energies cannot create anything independently. This is also confirmed by the Lord himself in Bhagavad Gita 9.10. Mayadakshena Prakriti Suyate Satchurachuram. This material nature is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, and it is producing all moving and unmoving living beings. Only under the direction of the Lord, the Supreme Person, can Prakriti, which is manifested in 24 elements, create situations for the living entity. In the Vedas, the Lord says, Madhyam Mahi Manam Cha Para Brahmiti Sabditam Vetsyasi Anugrihitam Me Samprasner Vivritam Vidi. Since everything is a manifestation of my energy, meaning Krishna's energy, I am known as Parabrahman. Therefore, everyone should hear from me about my glorious activities. The Lord also says in Bhagavad Gita 10.2, Aham adir hidevanam I am the origin of all the demigods. 1 second. I am the origin of all demigods. Therefore, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the origin of everything, and no one is independent of him. Srila Madhvacharya also says, Anisa Jiva Rupena. The living entity is Anisa, never the controller, but is always controlled. Therefore, when a living entity becomes proud of being an independent Ishvara, or God, that is his foolishness. Such foolishness is described in the following verses. Text number 12. A foolish, senseless person cannot understand the Supreme Personality of God. Although always dependent, he falsely thinks himself the Supreme. If one thinks, according to one's previous fruitive actions, one's material body is created by the father and mother, and the same body is annihilated by another agent, as another animal is devoured by a tiger. This is not proper understanding. The Supreme Personality of Godhead himself creates and devours the living beings through other living beings. Okay. That's what foolish, senseless persons do not understand about the Supreme Personality of God. Purport. According to the conclusion of the philosophy known as karma mimamsa, one's karma or previous fruitive activity is the cause of everything, and therefore there is no need to work. This is a false idea, but it's very current. Those who arrive at this conclusion are foolish. When a father creates a child, he does not do so independently. He is induced to do so by the Supreme Lord. As the Lord himself says in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Sarvasya chaham vriddhisani visto matak smritir jnanam apohanam cha. I am in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Unless one receives dictation from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who sits within everyone's heart, one cannot be induced to create anything. Therefore, the father and mother are not the creators of the living entity. According to the living entity's karma, fruitive activity, he is put into the semen of the father, who injects the living entity into the womb of the mother. Then, according to the body of the mother and father, yata yoni yata bijam, the living entity accepts a body and takes birth to suffer or enjoy. Therefore, the Supreme Lord is the original cause of one's birth. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is the cause of one's being killed. No one is independent. Everyone is dependent. The true conclusion is that the only independent person is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, well, that's good. No one is independent. Everyone is dependent. The true conclusion is that the only independent person is the Supreme Personality of God. Text number 13. Just as a person not inclined to die must nonetheless give up his longevity, opulence, fame, and everything else at the time of death, so at the appointed time of victory, one can gain all these when the Supreme Lord awards them by his mercy. Yeah, people like to take uh, the success as they're doing, but actually, success or non-success is all determined by the Lord Himself. Purport: it is not good to be falsely puffed up, saying that by one's own effort one has become opulent, learned, beautiful, and so on. All such good fortune is achieved through the mercy of the Lord. From another point of view, no one wants to die, and no one wants to be poor or ugly. Therefore, why does the living entity, against his will, receive such unwanted trouble? It is due to the mercy or chastisement of the Supreme Personality of God that one gains or loses everything material. Very important verse. No one is independent. Everyone is dependent on the mercy or the chastisement of the Supreme Lord. Now, see, these are very important statements. Most people, almost 99% plus, believe that they're independent. And but in reality, no one is independent. Everyone is dependent on the mercy or chastisement of the Supreme Lord. That is our takeaway for today, by the way. There is a common saying in Bengal that the Lord has 10 hands. This means that he has control everywhere, in the 8 directions and up and down. If he wants to take everything away from us with his 10 hands, we cannot protect anything with our 2 hands. Similarly, if he wants to bestow benedictions upon us with his 10 hands, we cannot factually receive them at all with our 2 hands. In other words, the benedictions exceed our ambitions. Wow, there it is. That's something like a poetry. The benedictions exceed our ambition. The conclusion is that even though we do not wish to be separated from our possessions, sometimes the Lord forcibly takes them from us, and sometimes he showers such benedictions upon us that we are unable to receive them all. Therefore, either in opulence or in distress, we are not independent. Everything is dependent on the sweet will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We got to drill this into our head, our brain. Everything is dependent on the sweet will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 14. Since everything is dependent on the supreme will of the personality of Godhead, one should be equipoised in fame and deformation. Equipoise means not disturbed, and to be steady in one's devotional service, whether it's successful or not successful. One should be equipoised in fame and deformation, victory and defeat, life and death, and their effect represented as happiness and distress. One should maintain oneself in equilibrium without anxiety. Well, see, that's sometimes people are uh, purposely accused of doing something bad. A real devotee is never disturbed by that because they know I didn't do anything wrong. So why should I be worried? But uh, some people get so what you would call intimidated that they sometimes they can even faint or die because they think that they're going to be uh, a failure in life. But a real devotee is never, uh, let's say, intimidated by false uh, accusations. Some people, when they're falsely accused of something, they become so, uh, let's say, uh, so um, confused and fearful. Like, for example, let's say there is a situation of like there's war going on, and there are bombs falling on people's, bombs being thrown here and there, and people dying. That, of course, is very terrible, and it's very stressful. But a devotee completely depends on Krishna, the Supreme Personality Godhead. And oftentimes, even though one is living in such precarious situation, the devotee is not frightened or upset or confused because he takes full shelter under the Lord. And the Lord says, Kontiya pratijani name bhakti pranasya. Declare it boldly, Arjuna, that my devotee will never perish. Well, we should believe that statement, even though sometimes we might be in very horrible, difficult situations. But we should have faith that Krishna will protect his devotee because he promises that. Okay. And now, since everything is dependent on the supreme will of the personality of God, one should be equipoised. In other words, you shouldn't get freaked out, they say. Um, one should be equipoised in fame and defamation, victory and defeat, life and death. In their effects, represented as happiness and distress, one should maintain oneself in equilibrium without anxiety. That's very important. Very, very important statement. We should be, we should maintain ourselves in equilibrium without anxiety. That is because we have complete faith in Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One should maintain oneself in equilibrium, not being exalted on success for success or defeated and completely devastated by non-success. Yeah, there's a history. I forget exactly the situation, but there was this one man who was fighting with the enemies, and it looked like he was going to be killed, and and his side would completely be defeated. When he was thinking about this, he noticed that there was um, a what do you call that? A bug that was uh, trying to make a cobweb, and it kept trying to connect one thing to another thing, and he and this little bug or fly or whatever it is missed several times, three, four, five times he missed connecting, uh, but he didn't give up, and eventually he was able to make this the cobweb very sturdy. But he kept failing, but eventually he succeeded. So this man who was a warrior and he was in a place hiding, and he saw how the bug didn't give up. He just kept trying to connect two things or the filaments, uh, and eventually he succeeded and made the cobweb. So that gave the man uh, solace and faith that he should not give up. He learned that by watching this bug make a cobweb. Actually, when the bugs are able to do that, uh, they do it with their own saliva, and they can also um, swallow the saliva. They can build with their saliva, and they can uh, uh, take the saliva back in and go somewhere else. It's very interesting to study insects and how they work. So this man who was a warrior, but he was like hiding and sort of very, uh, you know, uh, very not scared, but very discouraged. But he watched this spider uh, make his, uh, the spider web. But he failed. The spider failed several times, but the spider didn't give up, and eventually he was able to make his cobweb. And this gave, let's say, uh, a uh, a uh, enthusiasm, uh, and this person who was hiding from battle became enthused by seeing the spider and how the spider didn't give up. And then he went back into the battlefield and he won the battle because of seeing this the what you would call the spider that didn't give up. It just, even though it failed many times, it didn't give up, and eventually he finished building the spider web. Text 15. One who knows that the three qualities, goodness, passion, and ignorance, are not qualities of the soul, but qualities of the material nature, and who knows that the pure soul is simply an observer of the actions and reactions of these qualities should be understood to be a liberated person. He is not bound by these qualities. Ah, interesting. Let me read that again. One who knows that the three qualities, goodness, passion, and ignorance, are not qualities of the soul, but qualities of material nature, and who knows that the pure soul is simply an observer of the actions and reactions of these qualities, should be understood to be a liberated person. He is not bound by these qualities. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. As the Lord explains in Bhagavad Gita 1854, Brahmabhuta prasanatma nasochitina kankshati samaksarve subhute su mad bhaktim labhate param. It's a very famous, important verse. One who is transcendentally situated at once realizes the supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments or desires to have anything. He is equally disposed to every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotional service unto me. When one attains self-realization, the Brahma Buddha stage, one knows that whatever happens during his life is due to the contamination of the modes of material nature. The living being, the pure soul, has nothing to do with these modes. In the midst of the hurricane of the material world, everything changes very quickly. But if one remains silent and simply observes the actions and reactions of the hurricane, he is understood to be liberated. A real qualification of the liberated soul is that he remains Krishna conscious, undisturbed by the actions and reactions of the material energy. Such a liberated person is always jubilant. He never laments or aspires for anything. Since everything is supplied by the Supreme Lord, the living entity, being fully dependent on him, should not protest or accept anything in terms of his personal sense gratification. Rather, he should receive everything as the mercy of the Lord and remain steady in his circumstance. So there it is. We should not get freaked out when things are not going well. We should remain equipoised and continue chanting our rounds and not doubting the protection of Krishna, and understand that whatever is our destiny, we will accept it, knowing very well that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he can give us victory or he can give us defeat. But in both cases, we do not stop being Krishna conscious. Whereas people who don't have knowledge of Krishna, they can be puffed up when they're successful and devastated when they are not successful. But the devotee is equal in both situations. He doesn't get puffed up by being successful, and he doesn't get dejected by being defeated. Okay, I think we're going to stop right there. Are there any questions? Are there any questions? Okay.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Yes, go ahead, Brahma.
Guru Maharaj, quick question. When two devotees are planning for devotional service, but if they run into conflict, and in those situations, how do we like who should pursue whose path? So how do we decide in those cases? Because there is a duality even in the devotional service. Um, how do we resolve those things?
Well, the genuine devotee will do everything possible to avoid an argument, even if he is, uh, let's say, falsely accused by the other person. The genuine devotee knows that he has not committed any offense and he's not done anything illicit. So even though he might be falsely accused or he might be, let's say, defeated in trying to do something, he's not worried. He continues the regulated principles of devotional service day after day, year after year. The situation might be good, the situation might not be good, but he never stops chanting his rounds, he never stops doing his devotional service, he never stops being joyful because he has the ability to be Krishna conscious. So the devotee is never defeated. In other words, success or no success does not affect the devotee's engagement in devotional service. Is not affected by success or by or defeat. He remains steady in his devotional service, knowing that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, and Krishna can give success or it can give defeat. Therefore, whatever the devotee is experiencing, he accepts it as the mercy of Krishna. And he continues his regulated devotional service. That's the real devotee. Whereas a non-devotee, when there's success, oh, they're jubilant. And when there's not success, oh, they become very, very morose and upset. And they think of, jumping out of a window or something. Just like, uh, in the previous history, there was a major stock uh, problem where a lot of people lost money. And because they had no, let's say, knowledge of Krishna and devotional service and love for God, people were jumping out of windows. And it was unnecessary. All right, they lost money, so what? It's not the end of the world. Right. But because they have no knowledge of Krishna, they thought, oh, I better kill myself. Right? I lost my money. But it's only paper, right? What is money? It's just paper. But they thought, oh, no, I cannot continue to live anymore. And they were jumping out of windows. Just see. That means they have no knowledge of God. And their only so-called knowledge is stock prices. When the prices go down severely and they lose money, they really think about committing suicide because they're spiritually bankrupt. spiritually bankrupt. Right? So a real devotee is not has equilibrium. He's not disturbed by the ups and downs of the material world. But that is going to be tested. The devotee is going to be tested by Krishna. And we should never be intimidated by the ups and downs of the material world. No matter how severe it is, we should maintain a complete faith in Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and never uh, become so, let's say, upset or so frustrated that we give up Krishna consciousness and we blame it on Krishna. Mm-hmm. No, we should accept all situations and continue our devotional service and not be upset, not blame Krishna, not get angry at God. We should just continue our service, knowing very well that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he promises to protect his devotees. But he can test his devotees to see if they are really a devotee. So we should always accept difficult situations as a test of Krishna to see if we're really serious or not about being Krishna conscious. So when everything is going all right, yeah, you're happy, you can be Krishna conscious. But when everything starts going down, that's when we'll see who is a real devotee and who is not a real devotee. The real devotee, whether in success or failure, is always maintaining himself in equilibrium without anxiety. That's what this verse is saying. Text 14, Canto 6, chapter 12, text 14. Since everything is dependent on the supreme will of the personality of Godhead, one should be equipoised in fame and defamation, victory and defeat, life and death, and their effects, represented as happiness and distress. One should maintain oneself in equilibrium without anxiety. This is our takeaway for today and our takeaway every day. We should write this down
Question.
and maybe have this is a type of verse that we should put on the wall or somewhere and look at it every day.
The whole text, Maharaj, the whole translation.
Question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Since everything is dependent on the supreme will of the personality of Godhead, one should be equipoised in fame and defamation, victory and defeat, life and death, in their effects, represented as happiness and distress. One should maintain oneself in equilibrium without anxiety. There it is.
Hare Krishna. Sorry.
Yes.
So I have Hare Krishna Maharaj. I have a little question on that part. So this the equilibrium, regardless of what happens, right? Like if you have the faith in the Supreme Lord, then you can do that. So is that on the flip side? Does that mean that atheists can never? So if someone is an atheist and doesn't believe in God, they're not going to be able to reach this state. Is that a fair statement?
Well, I don't know if it's fair or unfair, but it's the lack of faith that the person has. And that's their own problem. they haven't been educated properly. And when they lose, let's say they have a big amount of money in their 401k, and then there's a severe stock down uh, uh, stock what you call um, devaluation, and their portfolio goes from $1 million to zero. So
Or
many,
is it?
many people will commit suicide. It happened whenever there's a big loss on the stock market, some people commit suicide because they have no relationship with Krishna. Their whole relationship is with their stocks. And sometimes the stock market goes up, sometimes it comes down. Sometimes it goes seriously down, very severely down, and people will commit suicide and also kill their wife and children.
Mhm.
Have you ever heard about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's because they are spiritually bankrupt. They have no understanding of Krishna. Go ahead.
And they call
And
it honor killing.
Honor killing, yeah. Killing their wife and kids and then killing themselves.
And in the current day context, we also see that like people who do not have the proper faith in God and the devotional service, they might also get disturbed by like political changes or things like that, right?
They lost. They lost uh, the. When let's say there's an election going on, and their side loses, and then people say, "Oh well, we're going to leave the United States. We're going to go live somewhere else. We'll never come back again." But they never leave.
Yes, Maharaj.
Like whenever Trump wins an election, the women say, "Well, I'm not going to let my husband have sex with me now until Trump gets out of his position." It's stupid things like that. Or they say, "Well, I'm leaving the United States. I'm not going to come back here." Uh, all stupid things. There's no equilibrium. There's panic-stricken people because they have no faith in Krishna. Their faith is what? It's nil, no faith. So they do crazy things like jumping out of windows, or I remember one time the women were openly saying, "We're not going to let our husbands have sex with us because they are happy that Trump won the election. So now we're going to punish our husband by not letting them have sex with them." That's all crazy nonsense junk. So a devotee, a real devotee, is equipoised. Never gives up being Krishna conscious, even in the most severe situations. And also, even in the most uh, situations in which they are tremendously blessed. In both ways, it doesn't change the devotee's life. It continues his regulated uh, activities. He doesn't change the way he acts. He might be very, very rich, or he might be very, very poor. He accepts whatever situation he's in, and he's equipoised. He continues his devotional service without interruption. So someone might be very rich, And then later, someone might lose all that money, but they don't commit suicide. They don't kill they don't do any, uh, crazy thing like kill their wife and kids and then kill themselves. They just accept the situation and continue chanting Hare Krishna. The people that kill themselves because their stock market goes down, they have no relationship with Krishna. All they know is the stock market. But the devotee, all he knows is Krishna and devotional service. So therefore, he's not going to kill himself if he loses a lot of money on the stock market, or he's not going to get puffed up if he wins a lot of money on the stock market. Uh, he continues his devotional service and he gives almost all of his money to Krishna. Therefore, he's not attached. Yeah, so we should not be disturbed by the ups and downs of material life.
Yes, yes, Maharaj. That's a very good answer.
Right?
Thank you.
All glories to Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I
Yes,
have one question, Maharaj.
yes.
Maharaj, in this material body, we'll still um, become sick, we'll fall sick, we'll get disease. How can you be equipoised during that time, Maharaj? What is the right way to be equipoised during that time?
Well, you're equipoised because you're still chanting your rounds every day. You don't stop chanting your rounds because you're sick or you have an accident or whatever. Because you have faith in Krishna. And that faith is maintained by following the regulative principles of Krishna consciousness. We don't say, well, Trump won the election. I'm not going to chant Hare Krishna anymore. That's stupid. Who cares? Trump won the election. You know, we should be steady in Krishna consciousness with full faith that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So whether there's success or whether there's failure, whether there's war or bad weather or uh, your house burns down, still you maintain chanting your rounds and you have complete faith in Krishna. I mean, many years ago, my house burned down, and it didn't change my life. I didn't get upset, and after some time, everything came back to normal. There was some inconveniences because my house burned down. Right. Fortunately, I had what do you call it? I had what do you call it?
Insurance, Maharaj?
I had insurance. Yeah. So, but even if I didn't have insurance, it didn't disturb me because so what did the house burn down, right? If I have to sleep outside, it's okay. Just as long as I can chant Hare Krishna and maybe have a little bit of prasadam, life goes on. So we should not be devastated by the downturn in life. We should have complete faith in Krishna. And when Krishna sees that, he'll be testing us. But when he sees that we don't give up, we don't get angry, we don't blame Krishna, we don't say, I'm not going to chant anymore. I didn't get what I wanted. I prayed so much, so fervently to have something, and Krishna didn't give it to me. Now I'm not going to chant any more rounds. I don't trust Krishna, or I'm going to reject Krishna. No. Whether in success or failure, the devotee continues devotional service, he's not disturbed in his regulated devotional service. That means he's a real devotee. People who get distressed by the ups and downs of the material world, that's because they don't have faith in Krishna. But when you have faith in Krishna, you don't get disturbed by the ups and downs of life. Why? Because we don't belong in this material world. We belong to the spiritual world. In the spiritual world, the, we are steady in devotional service. That means, although we're still in the material world, but we're acting like being in the spiritual world because we're not disturbed by whatever happens. So we're going to be tested. Every one of us is going to be tested to see if we are actually a genuine devotee. And we should not be afraid of the tests. Some of them can be very severe, but we should persevere by maintaining our steadiness in practicing the rules and regulation of Krishna consciousness day after day and year after year, right up to the moment of death, chanting our rounds and glorifying Krishna. That means that we're real devotees. If things depend on whether the stock market goes up or down, or whether we are successful or not successful, those things will not disturb a devotee. The devotee stays steady and is basically never gives up the vows that the devotee made at initiation. What are the vows? No meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex, no intoxication, and always chanting at least 16 good rounds every day. Well, we promised to do that when we got initiated. So, in other words, nothing should stop us from following the vows that we made. And so that's a real devotee. You make a vow, and if you break the vow, that means you're not a real person. But when you make a sincere vow, like the vow of initiation, no meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex, no intoxication, always chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra every day, and engaging in devotional service and eating only Krishna Prasadam and associating nicely with other devotees. And that means that we're going to do this for the rest of our life. When you get initiated, you're making a vow that you're going to keep for the rest of your life. So there are some positive things that you're always going to do, and there's some negative things that you're never going to do. You make a vow: no more meat eating, illicit sex, gambling, intoxication, always chanting my rounds, good rounds, and eating only prasadam, and chanting Hare Krishna, and associating nicely with devotees and so forth. So we make certain vows when we get initiated. And if we follow those vows, that means we're real devotees. And if we become slack in following our vows, that means that we are not following the rules and regulations. We're weak in following the rules and regulations. We're not always chanting our rounds. We're not always eating prasadam. We might sometimes eat things that are not offered. Right? So in that case, when we do things like that, it weakens our determination to strictly follow the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness. So we have to be very careful. When you make a vow, that determines who you are. And if you violate the vow, that means that you're not a real person. You are a what you would call weak, faithful person. Very weak faith in Krishna. But when you have strong faith in Krishna, you never will violate your vows of initiation. The vow of initiation is very important. It defines who you are. If we violate that and engage in illicit activities, it is a disaster in one's life. A disaster. Yeah. Okay, Hare Krishna, where's the Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai? I think we'll stop right there. It's 8 o'clock and continue later on today. Thank you. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. What would we do without the Hare Krishna knowledge? We would be lost, completely lost.